Okay, this is just another one of those motorized bicycle videos. I haven't did a video in a long time, so I'm kind of practicing for more important ones in the future. It's my Kent KZR. I was bought online from Walmart for about 140 bucks. That's a Zeta engine from eBay for about 80 bucks. There's no performance parts on it. There's a couple adaptations I've done to the carburetor and its intake. Nothing on the engine, it's just stock engine. One of those kits you get out offline. There's a sprocket that came with the engine kit on that bike, and the rims that came off this bike. I didn't like these rims because it takes these long ended Schrader valves that you can only find at a bike shop, at least not the Walmart that the bike comes from. My solution to that was to use a valve extension on a short valve that you can get at Walmart. The trick is with that, if you screw that thing down too much on this valve, at least with those extensions, it depresses the Schrader valve and lets it leak. So pump up the tube while it's out of the tire and find the little happy spot that it's not depressing the valve stem, because it'll leak if you go monkey tight on it. Back it off a little bit, it'll stop and it'll still engage. I thought I was gonna keep it screwed all the way in, the way it was just a straight valve through, and then put a black cap on it, which is threaded, but the black caps don't leave room for that, and it didn't. And this does not have a seal in it. The seal is your Schrader valve, and this is just a straight channel. I guess you can put a valve stem cap on it that has a rubber seal, but after you pump it up, you're gonna start losing air, and it's not. Just find a happy spot for it. Then I can find tubes every day for cheap that'll fit these rims. And these rims kind of suck because where there's joined, this joint right here isn't welded right, so you're never going to get these round. These are cheapies. So I decided to put it on that bike, which is another Walmart bike. It's a hyper bike. It had a motor on it before. I sanded it off and brushed the aluminum. The fenders come from that bike. That I got the spokes for this bike. That's my truant stand. I got that from a pawn shop, and a track mountain bike that I got this Bonta Ranger rim and some other generic rim. I had to drill out the spoke holes in the hub and the rim to fit these 12 gauge. One problem I've had from the get-go was this sprocket will make your true not rim, and your rim not true. I trued the rims, put the sprocket on there, clamped it down real tight, spun it, it was out of whack. I had to re-true it. So that's the downfall with those things. They do pretty good on holding the spokes, but you don't want to do it with these 14s. It'll break them eventually. And it doesn't stay in round. It doesn't like to stay in round. No. You want to go with this. But like a video on YouTube somewhere here, this guy put a keyway from a motor and a pulley a keyway for a motor shaft and a pulley. Okay. Right in there. Used a Dremel tool. Had to take a couple spokes off to fit it all in there. I decided to go with a tension pin. A 3/16 by 2 tension pin. I drilled a hole while I was building it, and it didn't have the axle or the index gear on it. It was just a naked hub, hollow hub in there. And once I established the spoke pattern, I clamped it together without the sprocket, drilled a hole, and in the process of putting it back together, my pattern changed to build a rim. Luckily, I left the little stem, the little piece sticking out of the roll pin, so you can get a hold of it and pull it back, so you can slide this bracket back out of the spokes to get it off. It hasn't twisted on me. It does really good, and all it took was a drill and a drill bit, and just pokes through the hub a little bit so that keys into it, and it's doing pretty dang good, so I'm happy about it. The carburetor, kind of touchy situation on this one sometimes. The joint between this angle and the carb, it has to fit all the way to the bottom. Once I took sandpaper and went back and forth on it till I got it to fit in there real good, I used a very small bead RTV sealant inside, slid it together without this clamp being on it. I pushed RTV sealant into the crack and sealed off the front, and then put the clamp on it, clamped it down, and then put it back on the bike. I did that all off the bike. And while it was off the bike, this primer, I gutted that thing. It doesn't have seals in it. It's really loose, and you're gonna get air through that. It was just easy. Take the bowl off. Up underneath it, there's a little pin that holds the valve inside there, which all that does is just drop the float down, and it starts to float it. That's basically what it's doing. I took that piece out, broke the needle off, put some epoxy putty down the hole and in the cap, squished it down there. He's in the park somewhere. Yep. Yeah, I epoxy puttied the primer down. You don't need it. I don't even start it on choke. I'll leave it on full pedal. It starts. No air leak. This is an aftermarket sprocket. It's 36 tooth with a stock engine. It does 41.6 on a good day. There's a Walmart spotlight, 20 bucks, and a flashlight. Some places it's not courteous to have the light of God on you. You know, it's not cool because that's really bright. I have the switch right here. It gets pretty serious. This guy, well, rattled the crap out of it. Oh, it is on. Yep. That's okay for sidewalks. So you're not blinding people when you're running them down, you know. When I built this room, I wasn't even worried about the brakes, because the disc brakes on these chibi bikes are crap. I rode this thing around for a month with disc brake on it, and it just didn't get no traction on it. You gotta baby these disc brakes, no oil on them. You really need to upgrade them. I'm not one to spend a bunch of money on a little upgrade. I'd rather just go with the caliper brakes. The cantilevers work really well. I'll probably just need to get a cantilever shock front brake. Those cantilever shocked forward and go that way in the front of it. To power this light, back to the light, this is 8D batteries. I wrapped it up, used box tape to keep them all together tight, spooled some wire up, put a washer over it, box tape over the end of it to where I had the connections. There's no solder, nothing on this. Then I wrapped the whole thing up with some thin cardboard, like a cereal box kind of thing. Taped it up, made it nice and tight. Used some black duct tape, zip tied it to it. 8D batteries make 12 volts, and I've been running that light for a long time. It's like a really big flashlight. It's like a homemade flashlight out of a car driving light. That's all that's powering right now, but I did put an LED a marker light as the tail light, which I'm gonna have to figure out how to run it through here and drop it out with a little spirally cord like you see on an old phone. That's how old I am. And work it back into the harness, and where the joint is from the battery and the light, I can bring the LED here, and when I turn the switch on, I'll have front and back. Let me get me in here. There you go. I used adhesive tape on this side of a flat screen TV hanger bracket that's connected to the clamp on the handlebar. That's pretty good ingenuity there, isn't it? And the conduit hanger to hold the flashlight. So it all kind of worked out. I can see on a trail doing 30, so I'm happy about it. These things, I don't know what the heck these things are. That's the biggest piece of crap. You fill this tank up, it's gonna drip. You lean it over any, it's running out. This is my second cap. It does it. It's just, I don't know. What else have I done to this guy? Oh, usually these, you're gonna break these. They're gonna snap. I'm sorry. In order to keep a lighter pressure on this, use 3M double adhesive tape, and it stays on there. I also did that for the fuel tank. 3M adhesive across the top of the bar. Made sure I carefully had it in the right spot and tighten these down to where I felt comfortable that I wasn't really putting enough stress to pop these out of the bottom of the tank. I think a plastic motorcycle tank off a little motorcycle would probably be a lot better than any of these things. This little rack, this little Walmart rack, it's a Swin. They clamp pretty good. They're alright. I have one on my fat bike. They're cheap. The Swin, if you go to Walmart, you're going to see Swin and Bell. The Bell has this little weird clamp, quick release like this on it. Don't even go there. It's a poor design. Right now, for the lights, I'm using this because I haven't wired the backlight yet. This is not the hub. This is the hub that come off the track bike. And that's the rim that was with that hub. Oh yeah, here's something else. Because I have it around the beach a lot, I've gone to countless numbers, pairs of pedals, getting sand in there. Every time you go to the beach, when you get home, you got to go through your whole bike and clean it all out. I figured out, get a new pair of pedals, take them apart, make sure they're nice and clean, pack it full of grease, set the bearing really nice and tight. Not tight as in the bearing, but the race. And then put yourself a grease zerk right there. It's a 6mm. Just use a regular 6mm tap, put it in there, and add a little bit more until I seen it squish out. There leaves no room for water to be able to get up in there. And if you do get a little sand, while you're turning it on the bike, you could be pumping it slowly with the grease gun, and it'll push all the debris out. Don't get too heavy because these are don't get too excited on the grease gun because you will pop that plastic cap out. It really needs a metal screw-in cap with a pedal on a pedal instead of the cheapy plastic ones, but that'll last a long time. I ended up taking them off because I didn't like it. Didn't give me any grip. Ended up with these guys that doesn't have a hole, so I can't put the grease zerk in there because if I did drill, there wouldn't be much hair left. You know, it won't work on this. There's no guard. I don't know. Probably the race is right here if you pop this cap off, but then if you pop the cap off, you can't put a grease zerk on that. Maybe from an angle, I don't know. Just no, don't worry about it. Get you one like this. I also did this. Put a grease zerk in the crank journal. They're not sealed bearings, normal bearings, except you got to watch out. You have to plug off the holes of the frame. Inside you'll see a hole going into each one of these posts. I used epoxy putty there and filled the hole and put a glob over the top of it, made sure it was clear of any of the moving parts in there. That sealed the journal off. Now I can use a grease pump into it and it'll squirt out all the debris. You have to come in here with a rag and wipe it all out on both sides. It's a little more difficult on that side, but no water or grease gets into the journal, even if it comes down on the seat post. I don't know, it'll probably rust out, but this is an aluminum frame, so whatever. I probably could put a weep hole right here since I've blocked out its means of drainage. Probably one up here and one up here. One thing I did do to it on the air filter, the filter cover, I cut everything off of that. I guess you can't really see it. Yeah, there you go. I opened the hole back here. You can breathe a little easier. It does run better with the baffle out of it. It has a lot more low end torque, but it's loud. You're not going to be very inconspicuous with an 80cc Zeta motor going down your neighborhood sounding like you have a dirt bike. So I just keep the baffle in it, but there's a tube that's connected to the end of this, in the inside. I did cut that whole tube off here, so the sound isn't having to go all the way down. The exhaust doesn't have to go all the way back down and through its little baffles and then back down the tube to this. No, it's still pretty quiet with that cut off and the tip of the baffle put back on. This gear, the 44 tooth sprocket, will take about 7-mile-an-hour start. You have to pedal a little bit to get it going. It'll kick over, maybe 5 mile an hour. With a 36, you're gonna have to get up to about 10 miles an hour to do a good start on the engine. And like I said, I don't do any of the choking or the primering or anything. I turn the fuel on. My choke is open. I just pedal and it starts. Nothing complicated. Don't overcomplicate it. If it's all running like it's supposed to, it'll start up. An improvement that I plan on doing is these little positional shifters, index shifters, whatever, need to be on here because this takes up a lot of real estate. That's pretty much the deal, man. I run the 32-to-1. The 41 mile an hour was achieved with 40-to-1 mix. I run Lucas, smokeless, and at 40-to-1, I don't see any smoke. It doesn't really drip, but it allows me to run 32-to-1, and it does smoke a little bit. It's supposed to be smokeless, so I know I'm probably kind of rich on it, but I feel comfortable. And I don't need to be doing 40 miles an hour down the road anyway. It'll do 30 all day, no problem. Before, with the 44, it was wrapping it up to get to 30. Right now, I have to wrap it up to get to 41. But to do 30, you want the 36. It does really good. I can cruise all over the place and keep up with traffic and still have a little more to go. I think that's it. Let's go over here to my rim building thing. This is my shoring stand. That's the surface you get around. That's the surface. You move this back and forth to true it up. I'm not going to give you a spoke lacing rim truing class here, but that's what the deal is. I can do it. It's pretty easy. That's all the equipment that I have. What I did run into with the 12 gauge spokes is the old Walmart spoke wrench. Actually, they say they sell them. You have to buy them online, but this comes from our bike shop. It's a 0, 1, and a 2. That works on all these little spoke guys, the common spokes. It doesn't work on a 12 gauge or an 11 gauge spoke. Some other tools. I have a couple other specialized tools, but like a wrench, a race wrench. You're going to want this. This is for the pedal. Yeah. Don't be silly like me and use a tie rod puller and just beat that thing off. You're going to do some damage to that and this, but just wait and go get you the pedal removal tool. When you do use it, make sure you clean all these little threads out. Flush all that out, because That's some little bitty threads, and when you screw that up or twist that in, cross thread that in there, you ruin this, and you put some wear on that. Then you're back to beating it off. You definitely want one of these. It's not expensive, but if you're building bikes, you gotta have one of these. And it just barely works on the motor chain if you're careful about how you're doing it. I really don't need it. I can use a drift pin. I can take a chain apart with a hammer and a drift pin and a socket and put it back together. But they are nice, and you really do need to get the right size for the 410 chain on the bike kit. That's pretty much it, man. That's the bike right there. It does pretty good. I like it. Alright, well, I guess I'll be making some more videos later. Feeling a little bit more relaxed, but yeah, that's my motorized bike. It gets it. You can do 40 miles an hour down the beach. It's nice. It's awesome. Oh yeah, before I let you go, let's talk a little bit. This is Texas state law. Max speed here is 30. I understand in Florida and California, they don't want you going over 20. You can do 30 here in Texas. The legal engine size is 50 cc. Of course, you're going to have to abide by the traffic laws. Of course, you're going to have to obey by the light laws. You need a tail light and you need a headlight. And in some more urban areas, they want you to have official bicycle headlights, headlamps, and tail lamps. Not this. That'll get you stopped. That's why I have the small flashlight. Even though some places I've heard don't like people having flashlights on their bike. That's not an official bicycle light. Other than that, that's pretty much it. That's how I did all that. And those are the problems and solutions to it. One day that might be motorized, and I might put a motor back on that one. Alright. It was nice doing my first video in a long time. Hope this comes out okay.